everybody. Thank you all so much for coming to the final Carothers lecture series for this year. It's great to see everybody here. I'm Paul Marty, professor in the School of Information and Associate Vice Provost for Academic Innovation and the chair of the Carothers Lecture Steering Committee. Happy to welcome you all here. If you don't recognize me, it's because I shaved off my beard so that I can play Daddy Warbucks in Young Actors Theater production of Annie that wrapped last weekend. And that was the most amazing thing that I have done in so many years. Community Youth Theater is brilliant, and oh heavens, working with those kids was just a joy. They're the best kids ever. So if you see pictures of someone who looks vaguely like me dancing with a bunch of kids, that was, yes, me, in a bald cap with my contacts in and no beard. My own mother said she wouldn't recognize me, and my own wife said, is that what your mouth looks like? But if you have not been here before, this is a great group, as you can obviously tell. There's pages on the table with the history of this lecture series. It's the oldest interdisciplinary lecture series at FSU going back to the 1980s. It is wonderful to see you all here. We have a really great treat in store for you today. We'll have Lustria and Joe talking about their very cool LabGenie project. We are working on the schedule for next year. We're going to have that done soon. We're going to have more great talks next year, so watch your email, and we'll be sure to keep everybody posted. We will definitely be doing more crossover events just like we did this year. The crossover events for the Festival of Creative Arts was super great. We're going to do another one of those. We'll do another crossover event with FSU Discovery Days for the Office of Research. So that's just fantastic, so that's going to be wonderful. Many thanks, as always, to the University Library for hosting us, for the Office of Faculty Development and Advancement, for promoting the series, for the Office of Research, for paying for the lunch. Yay, thank you. And as always, yay. And always thanks to the steering committee, many of whom are here right now, for their help in picking the speakers and coordinating the series. Without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Dean Chuck Hasler from the College of Communication and Information to introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, great, fantastic. I am thrilled to be able to introduce two of my faculty colleagues today. I can in fact keenly remember interviewing both of them prior to their joining our faculty, and I'm delighted by the fact that they chose to join us here at FSU, that they've grown their international reputations here, and that they are sharing their work with us today. Dr. Zhe is Professor of Information and Director of the Institute for Successful Longevity. There are a lot of titles and numbers I could give you with respect to Dr. He, and I encourage you to look them all up, but he's a fellow of the American Medical Informatics Association. He has published over 130 papers. I almost rounded up to 150 because I'm assuming we're at 150 at this point. Can't leave the house without winning another Distinguished Paper Award. He's investigator on millions of dollars of grants and winner of the Lois Lunan Award from the Association for Information Science and Technology. But equally important to me is that Dr. He is an amazing colleague, a stellar teacher who is deeply committed all the time to elevating absolutely everyone around him, and in fact, a lot of his team is here today. My other treasured colleague, Dr. Lisa Lustria, is Professor of Information, whose expertise is also recognized through courtesy appointments in the School of Communication, the Department of Behavioral Sciences and Social Medicine, the Public Health Program. She also cannot leave the house without winning another Best Paper Award. She's been investigator on millions of dollars of grants, there's a theme, and she leads the doctoral program in the School of Information. I've had the pleasure of collaborating on multiple research projects with Dr. Lustria, which is nice, as she's not only one of the world's experts in e-health and m-health interventions, she's also one of the best research group facilitators I have literally ever seen. She's magical. So I am grateful to have Dr. He and Dr. Lustria as colleagues, and I am really happy to be able to hear their presentations today. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Paul, for inviting us to be on this wonderful lecture series, and also thanks to Michelle for introducing us. I feel very grateful because I believe 2 years ago I was here also standing on this podium introducing my predecessor, myself, Director Dr. Neil Charnes. I was prepared for that introductory speech. I was trying to memorize whatever word I say because I thought this is really serious event. So you can imagine I'm taking this very seriously, and I'm very happy to be here to share with you our research in this very I would say our passion project. Both me and I felt like this is actually a project we really have to dedicate and really wanted to contribute to literature and also to the scientific evidence about how to better provide information to patients for them to better understand their lab results data. So the reason why I was interested in this research was beginning because many years ago we have some problem with medical conditions in our family, and we had a lot of lab tests done, and my wife had such a big problem, like understanding what's going on with our lab results. And we are already educated, well-educated. Both me and my wife had graduate degrees from different institutions, so we thought that even if we can understand our lab results, how can you imagine the people with only like living education experiences with living literacy will be able to understand those results? So that's why we can start exploring this. I collaborated with people from across the nation, New York City, with Indiana professors, to work on this project starting 2018. So publish a bunch of papers, try different kind of grants to support this project. And before we actually got this award from Agency of Healthcare Research Quality, we submitted, I believe, 2 R1 level grants got denied, and we were not discouraged because we thought this really is an amazing project we need to pursue. And then we try ISL as a funding. I've been also very dedicated to ISL because they can support my research quite significantly. So I was really grateful for that. So today we're going to share with you this project. I mean, last year we were also very fortunate to present our project in our AI coffee chat, also in 2012. I believe there were a lot of people there. I mean, some of you might be there as well, but this year we're excited to give you more updates about the project, and hoping that you will learn more about what we do, and hopefully you're interested in collaborating with us, and hopefully also help us spread the word about what we do in this project. So first of all, this is information about the grant, and the title is LabGenie, a patient engagement tool to aid older adults understanding of lab results. And this is R21, R33 funding by Agency of Healthcare Research Quality. I was just every day I was hoping that the agency will stay alive with the current administration. I mean, there's a lot of rumors about what's going on with the agency, but I thought I was encouraged by my colleagues that regardless of what's happening out there with federal administration, I think what we do is very meaningful. What we're trying to do is we're trying to promote health and well-being for older adults who have problems with chronic condition management and prevention. We thought that even if this grant will terminate it somehow for whatever reason, we're still going to be able to pursue this research and still be able to identify funding opportunities to support this research. And also, we are very happy that because of the university support, we're able to do whatever we want with this research even without funding. So I'm really happy about that. So we have such wonderful team. So we have a research core members. We have 2 different sub-teams. I'm the AI lead, so I kind of lead all the research activities with respect to using AI as a method and tool to facilitate generation of content for patients who balance on results data, lab results data. And my amazing colleague, Dr. Lustria, is also here, going to be also sharing with you some of the rationale of the project. And she's leading the human factors track, which also collaborating with Dr. Jen Zhao from Pace University. We also have collaborators from hospital systems, mainly from USF, University of South Florida. We're hoping to create more collaboration with Memorial Hospital, we'll see. And in this project, we're actually going to create this connection with TMH's newly launched EPIC system to be able to have their data automatically transmitted to our tool through a technology called FHIR. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. And also, we have amazing research staff. Many of them are here with us today. My wonderful data scientist, Baluba Surin, my app developer, Drew Kale, and many other students who are engaged in this project. And we're happy, I'm super happy about this project, mainly also because we've used this project as a platform to train next generation data scientists and mathematicians. We were able to produce high quality scholars, and we just are very happy. I'm just so happy that 2 of our summer interns last year from high school program got into MIT and CMU this year. Super happy about that. And we also have a wonderful collaborative advisory panel from many of them actually on this meeting. Dr. Dankar, Jing Wang, Dr. Neil Charnes still is very much a contributor to the project even after retirement. We also have Professor Lisa Granville from Department of Geriatrics. And also because I had an opportunity to work at National Library of Medicine when I was on sabbatical 2023. So I was able to make this connection to a wonderful colleague and leader in this area of natural processing, Dr. Zhiyong Lu from NLM, and also his postdoc mentee, Chao Jin. So we were really collaboratively work together on some NLP project and AI project. So I'm going to share with some of that. So certainly welcome to contact any one of us. And I believe everyone on the team is very passionate about the project and willing to share with you whatever you want to share. So then I'm going to invite Dr. Lustria to come here to share with you our rationale and some background information for the project.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Michelle. Can you guys hear me? Here's the mic.
Use the mic.
Yes, please
use the mic.
You can hear me. Is it working?
No.
No. Is this loud enough?
Don't know yet.
Hello? Is that loud enough? I have a very good inside voice. Okay, I try to speak as loud as I can. But thank you so much, Michelle, for that great introduction and for my team for being here. I feel like I'm just hanging on the coattails of Dr. Jha. We started this project, 5 years ago, several tries, and we feel that this is just in time, happening just in time. The technology has really developed over the years that now we can imagine more about what we can do with this project. So I'm going to start by just giving you a rationale why this project. In addition to what Jha was saying, personally we do have a stake in this. Everybody wants to understand their lab test results better so that we can, act on them in a more meaningful way. But it's also, most people don't realize that it's a right. There's a legal right based on some U.S. legislature, especially the 21st Century Cures Act, that everybody has to have immediate access to their lab test results. In fact, immediate means within the first 30 days. And that is often done through patient portals. And the idea behind that is because if you have immediate access, direct access to your lab test results, then you can, manage your conditions better. You're going to be more compliant. You're going to have more to discuss with your doctor. And you can also, if there are any abnormal results, then you can act on it in a more better manner. Okay. So instead of waiting and worrying, you can take control of your health and also to ask the right questions. Patient portals, let me move this. Oh. So has anybody accessed their patient portals? Everybody's offered this, not everybody actually takes advantage of this, but patient portals have become the cornerstone. So an electronic health record is your health record, which used to be on files, that is managed and held by your doctor. Okay. Just maybe a decade ago, now we have a view into those records, but that is largely managed by our healthcare system. Okay. Healthcare providers, insurance organizations, etc. And lab test results is one of the most popular features of patient portals. And yet, we found in the research that people still have a hard time navigating, finding that, and also making sense of the data that they have in their patient portals. So while patient portals provide great access to information, they're still presented in ways that are not really understandable. The assumption is that patients who go there are going to have the technical knowledge, medical knowledge to be able to parse out what this means or whatever, and to make sense of their lab test results. So on the very right side, on your patient portal, you can actually download a report, a lab test result, but it's in this format. It's in a table format. Okay. In the middle was a version of, you guys go to LabCore usually, right? In the middle is a screenshot of their version of their interface in 2024. Okay, so it has improved over time. On the right side here is a better visualization. They are using more visuals, but still it's very hard to navigate and really understand the impact on my health, overall impact on my health of these results. And they're not all equal, So this one is my chart. So if you are a teenage patient, they're using my chart, which they just actually moved to. So there's a lot of glitches here, but you can imagine here, you can see here that it's not any better than what we see on LabCore. In fact, you had to dig in through different navigations to find individual test results and or trends that you might be interested in looking at. Now, previous research shows us that patients often struggle interpreting these test numbers. In one study, many patients also reported that after receiving their test results, they also receive very little explanation. You're usually contacted via phone, right? Usually just to tell you everything's normal. And no explanation, you're fine, right? And so they, especially those who don't have enough medical know-how, often find themselves going online to look for more information. Okay, so that's wild, wild west too. We're not also equipped to do that in a meaningful way. The confusion can make patients either downplay a serious issue or panic over a minor deviation from the normal. So this gap in understanding can have real consequences on how patients manage their health. So building on these insights, it's clear that a one-size-fits-all lab test interpretation presentation doesn't really work, especially for older adults. Why? Because for older adults, interpreting these numbers isn't as simple as we think. With older adults, what accompanies aging are these age-related changes in things that would affect your blood test results. Hormonal levels, lower blood cell counts, deviations in or changes in your kidney and liver functions. This becomes even more challenging if you're dealing with multiple chronic conditions, you're using multiple medications, etc. And so doctors, to be able to diagnose them and treat them well, need to have a more holistic picture of not just single test results, but single test results over time in context. Okay, so we're not saying that we're going to develop a tool to interpret that information. What we're trying to do is to develop a tool that would give patients enough actionable insights so that they can talk to their doctors and have more meaningful conversations about their overall health, to put it into context. Because we know, especially for older adults, that you need a more nuanced approach. So that brings us to the goals of our project. Okay. So overall studies show that patients need more than just raw data, they need context that makes each result both meaningful and actionable. So as Jia had said, our goal is to develop an AI-powered, I know it's like, woo, that seems like a buzzword nowadays, but it's true. As I said, we came upon this time, this is just the right time to launch this project because, just to give you some context, 5 years ago, our idea was just to develop a dynamic way to present blood test results and to visualize that. Because remember, before it was just tabular, but we've already done a whole lot in that arena. So with AI now, we're thinking we can do a whole lot more than what we thought we could do before. So we are just in time. So we're going to develop this LabGenie, which is an AI-powered web-based tool that aims to transform how patients interact with their lab test results. And with LabGenie, we envision that patients are going to be seeing visual representations of their lab test results. But also with LabGenie, we're going to be able to leverage large language models to pull personal health data from electronic health records that patients don't have access to develop contextualized information, and also to present tailored questions that they can then bring to their doctor appointments and have these more meaningful conversations with their doctors. Okay, so ultimately, so we have two aims. It's a 5-year project, and ultimately we want to be able to. So the first 2 years we're going to develop the interface and also the back end system where all the magic happens. And then years 3 to 5, what we want to do is to test LabGenie in real world settings. And we have a lot of other exciting research ideas coming after that. Okay, so I'm in charge of aim 1, and this would be during years 1 and 2, we're going to focus on two main aims. For this one, we're going to design and develop the interface for LabGenie. But it's not just the look and feel of LabGenie, it's also what we're going to include in LabGenie. So at the School of Information, we emphasize a very participatory, user-centered design approach, which means it's not a top-down process. Although we know a lot about how to visualize lab test results, we don't know a lot about how to visualize lab test results in older adults. So this is one of our contributions. We've just completed 4 design workshops. We are also going to do what we call A/B testing, and then we're going to run a randomized control trial. So we're using a very systematic, iterative approach involving all potential stakeholders in the use of the system, including patients, older adult patients, but also clinicians who are on our team. Okay. So we completed 4 design workshops across 4 locations, 3 in New York and 1 in Tallahassee, with a diverse set of older adults to be able to gain insights on how best to visualize lab test results. We also wanted to know about their experience about using lab test results. So what we found is that most of them are familiar using patient portals and using other electronic means to get their lab test results, or to access and receive their lab test results. But 65% still felt that they didn't understand the information that they got. That was very telling to us. And so they also expressed the interest in getting more, they're vested, they want to get more information. They want to understand their lab test results, especially over time, and what that means in terms of how they're living their daily lives, okay? So focus on prevention rather than just on medication and treatment. So I'm just gonna show you a few insights going over what we did, what we tried to test during these design workshops. One was looking at different use of colors. Overall, participants generally preferred using color over black and white. Now remember, we're talking older adults, so we know that of general populations, but with older adults, that was confirmed. What is interesting though, there were some mixed findings with regards to whether they like the use of gradients, gradients between different ranges or solid colors. So in some cases, it varied by location. Some participants leaned more towards gradient displays because they found that to be more informative, and it communicated this gradual progression of risk. So they didn't really want to be, they wanted to be hopeful, not like, okay, you're dead, or something like that. So it communicated the gradual progression, and it also instilled a sense of hope that they could still do something about it. These are things that we didn't really imagine that would enter their minds. Some people preferred solid colors because they wanted immediate warning signals. And there was one person, I think, who didn't want to know anything unless anything was abnormal and preferred black and white, just tell me. We also tested different kinds of labels, like borderline, the use of the term borderline, or risk, okay? And so some participants liked risk because it conveyed the sense of urgency for immediate action, whereas other patients prefer the term borderline because it's easier to understand. And again, they found it to be more motivating than using the term risk. And you'll notice if you go to your lab test results, they use a combination of those different labels. We also were interested in seeing if they were interested in presenting goal ranges, especially for tests like blood sugar, okay? And for single test visualizations, participants preferred seeing goal ranges because they help, they said, with health monitoring and managing their disease better. But there was some confusion about whether the goal ranges was for them or was for their doctors. So they wanted to make sure who is setting these goal ranges, and is it for me or whatnot. Definitely for trend visualizations, they did favor goal ranges, noting that the clear goal helps focus their attention and guides them as to how they should behave or how to manage their health on daily, right? And so, building on what we've learned here on our design workshops, we're now running what we call a set of A/B testing, because there were some mixed results, so we're going to be running that to compare different versions of visualizations. But we're also going to further try to get more insights about that by conducting a randomized controlled trial to see if offering contextual information with highly personal details, health details, compared to generic information alone is going to lead to better understanding. So this slide shows a hypothetical scenario of a 58-year-old woman with long-standing hypothyroidism. So the lab values, just imagine that the lab values are going to be well outside the normal ranges. So that would indicate an urgent need for medical attention. See your doctor now. This is a potentially life-threatening situation. Okay? Some participants in the randomized control trial will be shown contextualized information, okay, which includes like personal health details and suggested questions to ask their doctors. Okay? So again, a lot of cues to actions, not just information. It's personalized, tailored information with actual cues to action. What do I do next? We want to activate the patient. We're going to compare that with the generic information where others will receive only generic format with standard blood test information, which you probably typically would get in an encyclopedia, Wikipedia, online, right? So this is going to help us determine the real impact of providing not just visualizations of lab test results, but also contextualized, actionable information, okay? So we don't really have an interface yet for LabGenie. This is just how we imagine it's going to look like. People are going to see their lab test results, and also to the right, also see some contextualized information. Highlighted in blue are personal information, including maybe their symptoms, their name, potentially type of medications that they're taking. Considering all that, and then in red are some suggested questions that they could then take to their doctors. We'll also give them a list of other questions that they can bring to their doctors. So this is what we're imagining. Now, how do we do that? As I said, the magic happens in the background. That's where the magic happens. And I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Ha, and he'll explain what's going on in the back end.
So as you may imagine, like all this generation should be facilitated by LLM or the language model. So that's why we felt this really important time for us to really be able to be up to date about what's going on in the AI world. As you probably imagine the AI is changing so rapidly, so we're keep looking for new technology, new methods. So here is what we're looking at in terms of really leveraging the best of AI to generate information we want to present to patients. So in A2, we hope to develop this AI-based question generation module, which will be feeding this information to the front interface. So here we are looking at this as an iterative process. And, I'm not sure any one of you have heard of a technology called prompt engineering. So this is essentially leveraging off-the-shelf models to try different prompts to see whether prompt can able to generate information that we want. So here in this process, we're getting data from electronic medical records and generate simulated patient scenarios using their lab results data, medication, and also other conditions, and generating this hypothetical, actually real-world clinical profiles, and then feeding this put into the context of our prompt, and then using an iterative approach to improve the prompt, refine our prompt, and evaluate the quality of question generated by AI by clinicians and later to patients. So for clinicians, we're asking 5 questions, very simple questions. Whether the questions are generated are easily understandable or clearly phrased, does they make clinical sense, and also whether they're likely to be used in clinical setting, or like whether patients typically would ask this kind of question to you, and also why are other questions significant to patient health, and would you be happy to answer those questions? So very simple way to evaluate it based on clinicians. So this is like a very busy slide, but they tell you how much effort I put into this question generation module in terms of creating this prompt that is able to generate questions based on electronic medical data. So we actually have looked at 3 different versions of this information. So actually, the first iteration we focused on looking at feasibility, mainly focused on whether it's possible to use AI to generate questions using electronic medical records. And then the second iteration, we're looking at whether we can refine it based on the first iteration feedback. And in the third round, we're looking at whether adding positive or negative examples based on user feedback or clinician feedback will be helpful to generate more meaningful questions to our to this particular problem. So I'm not going to bore you, but essentially our problem is actually focused on prioritizing questions that are significant to patient health, and whether these questions are actionable, and also whether they focused on more abnormal or more problematic lab results compared to some other less significant labs. And also we want to make sure that the questions are understandable, so we emphasize please use 6th grade reading level for the questions, and also make sure that this question can be addressable or understandable or discussed within the 15 minutes of patient consultation. So here is our hypothetical patient scenarios. We get this data from electronic medical record and de-identify that, removing all the identifiers. And then you can see you have a block of lab results, a block of medication use, and a block of diagnosis. So comparing our first round prompt generation generated question to the second round generated question, we found that we do kind of pairwise comparison. So we found that the first round are mainly focused on lab values and what do they mean. Whereas the second round, they focused on also the meaning behind those and actionable insights they can follow up on in the context of individual patients. So you can see, for example, this lab GFR, which is a measure for kidney function, the second round prompt will be able to contextualize it with the diabetes and the kidney cyst conditions. And the second question focused on creatinine. The first round is focused on how to adjust medications based on my creatinine level, whereas the second round is also looking at use of medications for diabetes control and also other strategies that could be used for managing these labs. So based on our clinician evaluation, we basically evaluated these questions with clinicians and asking them those 5 questions as I mentioned before. So for all the 3 clinicians, we found that the second round prompt is a little better than the first round of prompt in terms of those with respect to those 5 different aspects. So this is a yes/no question, whether they're clearly phrased, whether they're understandable. So most of them found that questions are very understandable and clearly phrased. And for the Likert scale questions, we actually found that out of the 3 doctors, 2 of them liked the second round question generated compared to the first one. Whereas there's 1 doctor who really don't like the second round prompt, but mainly because the patient we use for that particular clinicians is not that seriously sick, and also there's a time lapse between the first round evaluation and the second round evaluation, so the doctors may not be using the same standard providing those Likert scale evaluation results. So that's why in the third round we basically generate using the second round prompt and also using the third round prompt we generate different set of questions, and we ask clinicians to review them all at the same time. So in the third round, the actually answers are basically they are pretty comparable for the second round, third round. And the clinicians found the third round prompt will be able to generate stronger, more specific, and clinical relevant questions. But there was also some conception about some clinicians found that the questions sometimes may not be asked by patients because they don't understand that much information. But this is actually, I think, what we need is to be able to help patients formulate these questions in the context of individual health. So we're still hopeful, after this round, we're going to conduct also evaluation with patients, and mainly asking patients whether these questions are understandable to them and whether they're willing to use this question for their consultation with doctors. At the same time, another thing we want to focus on also is look at how can we improve the generation by AI for different purposes. So we're using technology called retrieval augmented generation. So instead of only relying on models' own internal pre-trained knowledge base, we're also feeding the model with credible sources from professional organizations that are related to clinical medicine and the lab medicine. So this information can be fed into models in different ways, either structured format, integral format, or unstructured format. Information such as those web pages and information about different labs from Mayo Clinic, from Mayo Plus, which are understandable by patients, can be fed into the model for generation purposes. So this general framework can ensure that information generated by AI is going to be infused with its internal knowledge base to make sure that the responses are more accurate and more relevant. So we had a paper published recently in a conference, And in this particular study, what we're trying to focus on is how to better make sure that we can retrieve those contextual factors related to lab results. So one factor is about like some labs are about like are specific for different age group and specific to different gender or even specific to different special conditions, especially for women. So, but for the most part, the current presentation of labs are uniform, are not like differentiating between those different groups. So we're looking at using AI to be able to find those contextual factors and also pinpoint the specific value range for a particular subgroup of population. So in this technology, what we're trying to do is to retrieve those articles from different sources, especially with MATLAB+, which provide us interpretation, and then we're asking AI whether you can find the factors that are related to this particular labs. And then also, given those combinations of factors, whether you can find an accurate reference range for this lab. So I'm going to skip something, but we also use a prompt engineering approach to retrieve factors and also retrieve reference ranges for a particular condition. But our results are quite striking. If we look at condition retrieval, if you just ask ChatGPT, what is the factor determining a particular lab, you only get about F1 70%, which means that roughly 71% of times you'll get a good answer, but 30% of times you may not get a good answer. But if we use our retrieval generation approach, it's almost correct, like 94.8% accuracy. And if you retrieve the actual reference range, if you're only using GPT-4, which is the most advanced version of GPT, you only get about half time correct. Most likely you may not get it correct. But using RAG, we can ensure that the retrieval rate of accurate reference range is about almost 100%, 99%. So this is our effort using AI to generate information related to lab results and also generate questions. But we also, at the same time, we're also looking at how to use a HIPAA compliant environment to host the system. So my app developer, Drew Kale, is working very closely with FSU ITS, looking at how to use our HIPAA compliant environment to leveraging technology such as multi-factor authentication, dual factor authentication, and also using Azure Static Web App to host this application. We're trying to also make connection to TMH, Epic HR through Fire API. So the information will be fed from TMH on individual basis, request basis, and then we're going to store their data into a Postgres database. And also information, as I mentioned, in the question generation module will be encapsulated in this prompt and be sent to ChatGPT, OpenAI Studio APIs to generate information about contextualized information support for patients on individual request basis, and then feedback to the patient on the front interface. So we do have like a prototype of the tool currently using running. Actually, we also have a demo, but if you're interested, I can show you the demo. But like people will be able to log in this tool. Now we'll be able to see some information pertaining to lab results, like their reference range and also their different visualization style, and asking some questions, and also seeing this trend of the data. And also this interpretation, focusing like how to interpret this trend, can be automatically generated by GPT API as well. So we can also allow people to see the questions, but based on our current research, we found that instead of providing like those individual questions, it's better to provide tailored support in the context of individual person's context, and also giving those options for people to see additional questions if they want to look at it for whatever purposes. So let's look into the future a little bit. In the future, there's also a variety of opportunities to use AI for different things. So for example, we can try using AI to generate relevant, accurate, and helpful information to answer those questions. We can try using AI to generate differential diagnosis for difficult cases. You probably heard news that there's also people saying, okay, I have a problem that cannot be diagnosed with doctors for 20 years. Now with AI, I can do it. We can also try using AI to provide some causal understanding of different factors influencing lab results. So this would be helpful for kind of looking at how to modify different factors so that you can reduce your risk for developing conditions such as hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and diabetes. So in this project, in the first project, we're using a social media data set to look at questions asking social media about lab results. And then we're trying different AI tools to see how responses can be generated and whether these responses are good enough, meaning whether they meet those 4 different metrics. So we use Carothers to create 50 different scenarios, and then using different AI tools to generate responses, and asking doctors whether those responses are good enough, using those 4 different questions. And the lower is better. We found that GPT-4 is better than even the human answers. You can imagine like human answers would be good, but if you ask lab questions on social media such as Yahoo or whatever general purpose AI social media platform, the results most likely may not be even better than AI these days. So, but still there are hallucinations and problems with AI. So that's why we see opportunities to augment AI with different approaches such as visual generation and even fine tuning. And also we thought that the responses by AI is not very individualized, mainly because the current version of AI is not interactive. Basically, you just provide one question and then just answer the question instead of asking additional questions, usually follow up. And in fact, in terms of medical decision making, you oftentimes have to ask additional questions about symptoms, about different diet, sleep pattern, whatever, to augment the information providing this question. But AI may not be able to do that at the moment. So we thought this is an opportunity for us to augment AI with a new approach called generative AI. So the second project I mentioned, the language model-based differential diagnosis prediction, the paper was we recently had a paper published by Nature Digital Medicine, and in this paper we look at some really interesting cases. We found like 50 cases published in literature, and most of the cases are dealing with conditions that are not very commonly reported. As you can imagine, if you have rare cases, you diagnose and patients are treated, you can publish papers. So we actually look at those papers, meaning those evidence may not be adequately prevalent in the literature, right? So the AI may not be able to understand what's going on with patients with those conditions. We found that using this kind of different scenarios, using different AI and different AI tools, using different prompt, engineered prompt, we found that our generated differential diagnosis, especially with more complex model like GPT-4, is actually pretty good. And also, especially we'll look at whether adding lab results to these cases or not would help patient. AI is able to accurately determine what conditions the patient may have. We look at top 1, top 5, top 10, and we evaluate the case with or without labs, and you can see with labs, all of these models perform better in generating more accurate differential diagnosis for patients compared to without labs. So I will refer to this paper. So we also found that because we compare the exact match of differential diagnosis with linear match, meaning the technology may not be exactly the same. Still we found that linear matching result is very, very good, meaning it could offer valuable insights into clinical decision making, because oftentimes doctors may not be able to accurately determine those diagnoses because they probably hadn't thought about that. So this AI tool can really help with that. And then more recent work we have right now working on is to look at causal understanding, meaning if you know those labs such as A1C or pregnancy can be modified if you change your diet, if you change your behavior, how would this change be able to influence your results? For example, we look at 3 different kind of causal AI scenario called associational, interventional, and contractual. So the associational questions such as if a person like a 60-year-old female smoker with hemoglobin over 6%, 63%, have a higher A1C level than the 30-year-old female non-smoker. So you can see that there are some factors like smoking status or age that could potentially influence the result. So interventional meaning whether you change your behavior, like you quit smoking, whether results are going to be better or lower, or whether if you have not been a smoker at all, whether results will be higher or lower. This way we could interrogate AI to better generate information and evaluate whether AI is going to be sensitive to those different questions that are formulated in different ways. So we're working with a professor at University of Florida, hoping to get this paper prepared in the next few months. And in the next few steps, I'm gonna, this one is something that I would imagine is really called magic, right? So I'm gonna stop here, but I will show this one really leveraging the generative AI approach to be able to automatically providing question answering to patients, so that doctors will be able to get support from AI, and also patients will be getting support from AI to either ask questions or integrate those responses by AI. So I'm gonna stop here and thank our team for this wonderful opportunity to work with all of you and be able to train more students in this project. Thanks so much, everyone.
we have time for a couple of questions. There's,
Yes.
So I'm already looking at version 2.0, which is, I want to know if you guys have anticipated or are thinking about how to do this with multiple years. So my whatever level, and then I do the things, and then I get to here, are you going to be able to link that to not necessarily questions, but feedback? Is there going to be an iterative process for looking at how my levels have changed when I've done the thing or haven't?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're trying to do with this new Gen AI and AI approach, because we have all this kind of factors. We know like what factors could be influencing your lab, and then based on your behavior, also based on our objective observation of the lab, we could provide some sort of insights into whether it's good enough for this or not, and then we can give you this kind of recommendation. I mean, this is definitely like what
That
we
was
can
the last
consider.
slide that we didn't get to hear about.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
last slide is gonna be more iterative, meaning like, people, AI can ask you additional questions to help AI understand better what's going on. And then, leveraging, outside sources, and also our, AI is able to give you those, precise recommendations.
Just imagine that you're using activity monitors or whatever. Right now, we don't have that capability of syncing our personal health data, like for using wearables with electronic health records, but imagine the time when we can. And that's gonna give us like observable data about our own behaviors.
Yeah, I think language models such as ChatGPT are used every day for any fraud, and I was wondering if you and team are considering any security steps for your platform, particularly with many security risks that are.
Yeah, that's why we're using the Azure environment as our platform, because Azure has this kind of agreement with OpenAI to ensure that the technology we use within this framework is kind of compliant. Meaning the information will have a zero retention. We will not memorize the information we send to AI for this generation purposes. And also, before we actually send information to AI, we'll make sure that information is completely identified, meaning we're not sending any patient information there. So, no patient name, no patient date of services, no location will be sent to AI. So there's no way that AI is going to identify the patient. So certainly because we are very careful with this issue.
So I have a couple questions about putting data in context. And I think I asked a similar question at the ISL event, right? Our healthcare is so compartmentalized where you go to all of these different specialists, and that information doesn't necessarily make it back into your primary care health record for people to really get a big picture look at what's going on in someone's body.
That's
Health. And so how to do that, but then also the context if dates are removed from the data, how you deal with change over time and time between visits and lab results and proximity of a doctor's visit to the collection of those labs and stuff like that.
Yeah, so for one thing, because we're using technology for the fire, and this is an interoperability standard right now, like used by many health applications. And the cool thing about this is that you actually can control over your own data. Imagine like you have currently your Apple Health is a technology that can basically import the other data from other different sources like LabGenie, like MyChart, like other system into a centralized data sort of storage. So that LabGenie could also use this tool because we're using the same technology. You can basically import data from other sources to augment data from different providers. We thought this could be also some way to alleviate the problem of fragmented care system in the U.S. that patients have better control over their own data. And with respect to the second question about the dates, so what we can do is that we can look at the shifting date. Basically, in HIPAA compliance, there's a notion of shifting dates to a particular difference. So you don't actually keep the original exact date, but the difference between visits could be the same. So that actually has been a practice for many warehouses for many years to make sure that data is not identifiable data.
So just a quick follow-up to that. If someone's interested in, for example, the effects of like a natural disaster, right, on health, and you want to be able to sync like EHR data to a major catastrophic hurricane that causes mold growth,
also like, based on the compliance, actually, a lot of people, they actually don't have to shift the dates drastically too much. You can probably stay in that proximity, so you can still keep track of, where the events happen, when the events happen, with respect to your own metadata data. But I think in the back end, because you can do things in the back end to save those information. You can keep the original dates, but like just when we present this information to AI, we just kind of hide it a little bit, so that we don't have to review this information.
Yeah, so I'm going to come back to where you started. So you started off by saying we have different kinds of platforms for how we get information, and patients can't interpret it. And then you talked about aging and older people. And when I look at the complexity of the information you're having, and even talking about linking all these things, when you talk to an everyday 80-year-old or plus, who are the most likely to struggle with multiple doctors, multiple medications, frankly not very good interpretation of data, and technological struggles with managing any online platforms. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with how you can think about that changing. You've got highly educated people who are very cognizant with, let's say, variation in their personality on how much detail, from people like me that want to know every little thing about every little moment of their entire life, to the people who are like, just tell me where there's a big problem. So you got those personality variations, but then you bring it into an older population that has much lower education, much less savvy, much less experience with these tools, and what they really need, and they're the most critical patient, I think, is something that allows them to say, I want to feel that everybody knows what's going on comprehensively, my doctors are up to speed, and I know if I'm okay or not. And by the way, what should I do about it? And I guess the question might be, from a practical perspective, do you have a vision for how this can kind of move in the direction of that kind of patient? Because I guess there's a lot of technical detail I feel like you're playing with, which is clearly really important and exciting, but I still worry a little bit about what that experience is going to be like. And just as an example, I waited for 3 hours at LabCorp for a simple lab test last week that made me want to, lose my mind, but that's another story. But while I was sitting there, I was sitting next to a woman that was 81. And we had a conversation, and she's like, I don't know why I can't check to see if my appointment is here. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And it turned out she just had, for some reason, the Wi-Fi turned off on her phone and the cellular data. So I sat with her and I talked to her about her phone. And this was a smart lady, highly educated, used to run a big program in Tallahassee. And she said, oh, I don't know why I can't figure this out. There's all these portals and I don't know what to do. My husband handles that. But she just clearly was very smart and couldn't navigate blood tests. Like this was her exact problem, actually. And what she really needed was something that didn't feel overwhelming to her. And I guess, are you going to work towards that in your clinical trials to try to find those, I'll say, typologies?
I would say like currently, because we have this wonderful like human faculty, working directly with older adults in every hour of human factor research. Human factor research, I think we learn a lot of things from the, how to manage our own data with all different systems. At the same time, we're trying to build technology for older adults in consideration of all of these issues, including like technology proficiency, access to data, be able to even log in their portal for some information. Because I sometimes have struggle. Currently, to be honest, I'm struggling getting into my LabCorp because I changed my phone number, and now we have to use dual authentication to do this access. I cannot access my LabCorp myself. So I thought this kind of issue could happen to anyone, not only older adults, right?
Yeah, not just them, but I would say they're the most extreme version who has the, and frankly, it was pretty clear this person was struggling with some cognitive processing. Like it was pretty clear she was just slower in processing information.
Actually,
Still functional, but still some barriers. And I guess I was starting to think about what would she need to be able to give her the insights she needs to do the best she can with where she is right now.
That's why we are trying to, in this figure, actually we're trying to engage doctors in this process as well. without trying to create like technology that's completely, get users out of
Completely
it.
patient-facing
No.
too.
It's we're right now, even though we're trying to develop a patient-facing application, but we're at the same time we're developing a physician-facing application. Meaning the physician will be able to see this information, will be able to then print out this information to patients, to hand them this physical copy of their lab, even with the interpretation, and also tailor question, tailor information for the question around the lab test results. So we can look at low-tech, some solutions, high-tech solutions, catering to different populations with different technology solutions.
It seemed like when you talked about fine-tuning the way that the questions are presented, that was done in a clinical focus, right? And you're speaking with the physicians to evaluate that. It seems like it could be useful to have something that is tuned to the individual needs, because the 81-year-old lady might have different needs than I need, than you need. And so is there a way that either the patient could do that or the physician do that for them, their staff or something? It seems like there may be an individualized approach to the way that the information is presented. You could just say, hey, no, I'm going to slide that slider down too simple. I didn't get that question. I don't know what it is. And so I wonder if there could be that type of testing in a similar vein as you've done with the clinicians.
That's what our team is doing for human factors and human centered. Whereas they're like high tech, we're like, let's bring it down, conversational, even just the wording, and we're talking about the layout. We're not quite there yet. We're trying to figure out if this can be done first, and then can it be useful to the patient? Because you're right, that's the end goal. It's for those who have different literacy levels, and they all want to know more, for certain. But we need to help them better use these systems, and or we're also thinking about the doctor using this on the other end, giving them a fuller picture too, to have those discussions. At the very least, what we want to do is to activate the patient. That's, I think, the overall goal, not necessarily for them to actually interpret information. So the simpler that we make that process for them to use that, to be able to give them questions that can help activate them, then we're closer to the goal. But yeah, moving forward, we have all these dreams about what we can do, but we also need to anchor that to the user.
Well, and on that encouraging note, so please join me in thanking Joe and Mia for this fascinating presentation. Really exciting to see how these tools are going to help us get better access to